Okay, welcome back to our podcast, and in this episode we're going to touch on the early years of the ExplorOz Traveller App, from basically when we started it till possibly halfway through its lifespan. One of the things that we mentioned in our previous podcast was, the mapping and the data that we were able to have access to was all this rasterized format for the maps. And now, whether you know what that means or not, basically a raster is basically a picture. It's a static image, and you can't, if you bring it closer or take it further away for zoom in, you don't get any more detail. It basically just has the same level of detail, just whether it's clearer and crisp or whether you move it away, it gets out of focus or more focal. So a raster map product was where we basically started the ExplorOz Traveller App. We'd been doing the EOTopo map set as a raster release for the Aussie Explorer users, some other users, Memory Map, and a few other mapping programs that were out there at the time could use our maps. Use these raster maps that we put out in different file formats to support those mapping products. So when we started with the ExplorOz Traveller development, we basically started with what we knew. So we started with the rasterized map product. So we were basically working on being able to deliver our raster map products in an offline capacity, so that you could basically take our raster maps with you offline and use them anywhere, coupled with our places database and some treks and some other bits and pieces that we thought were essential items to have when you're traveling. And like a lot of things, we were born from our experiences with Aussie Explorer over the years, sitting in the car saying, I wish it had, or I wish we had, I wish we could do, I wish we could do. And so over the first year or two of app development, it was all about putting in those wish we could do things into the app and building it so that we could use it. We were obviously restricted with certain things that we wanted to do. The file sizes for the raster images. We could create what was called more zoom levels by creating more raster images, but by creating more raster images, we needed more file storage. So there becomes a point in all of these devices where you're starting to ask for too much storage, or user experience or user perception. Oh, you need 5 gigs of storage. Way back then, 10 or 15 years ago, 5 gigs of storage was more than a lot of these devices had. So whilst we were coming through with our developments, we were obviously mindful of the restrictions and things that were available in the devices that could go offline and use your maps and the products that we created. So for a lot of years, we were sort of trying to cram all these wonderful features that we dreamed of for years and years as we traveled around into a product that, where we were limited with scope. We couldn't make it do everything that we wanted to do. So there was a number of years of development, taking user feedback. One of the big things that some of our listeners may not be aware of is that we are driven by our user feedback. So basically, other than our own, well, geez, it would be nice to have this in the app, most of the features and functions that are available in the app have all come in from user-generated feedback that we take really seriously, and a lot of the time we implement the things that are after us. Do you have any sort of parts to add to the journey of creating the app? Getting where you had the raster and we went down a certain path. Obviously, we got to a point where we had more access to data and vector storage, and I think we'll talk about the vector and the later stuff in another podcast. But
yeah, I think that the biggest thing that we had to contend with is that suddenly people have got either an Android device or they've got an Apple device, but
or
they're different. Yeah, or a Windows device, but they're very different. Not all devices were the same. And so for us as a developer, we were going through an evolution with our capabilities as well. So, do most people use it in portrait? Do they use it in landscape? Do they use more phones, or do they use more the tablet? Then there's people wanting them on their head units, and nowadays it's CarPlay, but in those days it wasn't so much. And just trying to make sure that we could have one program that we could be working on and developing and maintaining that had the synergy across all those different variables, so that it would automatically look the same on all those devices. And you could tilt it portrait, you could tilt it landscape, and then of course there's all the user management. So we have a lot of people that it's a husband and wife traveling. Do they have to pay for the app twice? No. Do they need to have 2 different accounts? No. So there's a lot of all that behind the scenes. And why have an account? Early on with digital products, some people had an objection to actually putting their email address in and letting a company have your email address. But from the point of view of making all this really cool interactive stuff work and be really user-friendly to you, so that you can mark a place that you want to go in the future that someone's told you about, well, how's it going to remember that 3 months down the track on your next device or your phone? So just trying to take some of that feedback of user wish list and making that possible is where a lot of all that think tanking went on for the early years. So our early adopters of the app were very instrumental in giving that feedback to us as they used it. Those early adopters, most of them are still on board, and I still talk to them today.
Yep.
And, it's fantastic to know that it's evolved through the hands of the people, because that's something that ExplorOz was always about when it was just a website. It was, providing services that people actually genuinely wanted. And being able to communicate with them and be available to them is something that's always been really important to us. So even with our service needs today, we're hands-on. If you contact our business, you're talking directly to me or to David. And that's something that is important. Well, okay, I'm the gatekeeper. That's the truth of it, isn't it? Everyone knows. I always say you're going to contact Michelle and David, but it's usually me you get. That's the truth. But yeah, so that's probably my input.
And so one of the things that is also really crucial and pivotal in our business operations is that we don't have a team of developers and we don't have a team of admin and support staff. We're it, and the buck stops here, and there isn't anywhere else really to go. Obviously, during the life cycle of ExplorOz, we've had up to 5 or 6 staff, and we've done various bits and pieces. But business pressures and where we wanted to take our business and our products, we wanted to keep it, within ourselves and within the capabilities of ourselves. And the ExplorOz Traveller App was my first app, and the ExplorOz website was my first commercial website. So we're not experts at any of this by a long stretch. So it did take us a few years of development of the app to bring it along to a point where we started to get more happy with it. We'd go out in the field and we'd touch base with people out there using it and get their feedback, again, for additional development and things to be put into the app. But it's really inspirational and really wonderful to go out or to get feedback from users that say, oh, we love the app, it does everything we want. There's got features in here we've never seen in anything else. Where did you come up with some of this stuff? And the answer is, user experience or our experience of things that we think were important and necessary to have in the product. And so, for those years of getting to that point, realistically, at around about the EOTopo 2019 and sort of mid versions, just after the last EOTopo 2019 was the last of our raster products. Just as that was coming to fruition and getting to the end of its update cycle, we were getting all this great feedback, and we'd realised that moving it forward even further, moving and getting better maps and getting better data presentation and more features to the users was something that was really important. And I think we'll discuss some of those in our next upcoming session, where we look at the technicalities and the bits and pieces of the ExplorOz Traveller App that make it unique and where it is today. So make sure you subscribe and catch up with us on the next one.